Foresight and strategy are essential elements of servant leadership. Robert Greenleaf, who coined the term servant leadership in 1970, believed that without foresight, the leader cannot lead. Foresight and strategy are crucial to serving others and helping them be better off for having encountered you. Greenleaf said, "One is at once, in every moment in time, contemporary, analyst, and prophet, not three separate roles." By this he meant that to achieve real leadership, one must have the ability to simultaneously know the unknowable and foresee the unforeseeable. In having and cultivating the gift of foresight, the leader sees the big picture and understands the long-term implications of her actions. To really have pathfinding foresight, the leader uses a three-pronged approach. First, intellection. Intellection is a leader's way of strategizing, preparing, and analyzing. This is essentially where the leader does her homework, so that she can have and know all the pertinent information to make the best decisions possible. Second, imagination. Imagination is how a leader plays out the process and consequences of various scenarios in her mind. She may incorporate images into her visualization as a way of complementing her intellection. Stevenson's 4 types of imagination are cognitive, affective, aesthetic, and moral imagination. They help explain the breadth of power imagination holds. To further widen the scope, Laterboch's 4 disciplines, relationship, curiosity, creativity, and risk, illustrates the depth of imagination. And third, insight. Insight is a part of what gives the leader her lead. That way she's more conscious, knowledgeable about things of interest to those she leads. A leader with great insight takes time to reflect on what is known through both intellection and imagination. Without intellection, imagination, and insight, a leader does not have the capacity or competency to truly lead others. A leader with foresight is able to ask relevant questions and identify the opportunities that will get her organization where it wants to go. Again, she does this by having the skill and competence to create a vision for the future by analyzing and strategizing using intellection, imagination, and insight. This is our campus ministry team at St. Francis. We are the 4 full-time staff members that work to meet the primary ministry needs of our community. Part-timers, not shown in the picture, include a Kairos facilitator, music minister, student liturgical minister, and chaplain. Together, we are responsible for the prayer, retreat, and service areas of our community life for our students, faculty, and staff. Although we primarily work together, we do collaborate with other staff members and departments on a regular basis. Steve is our director. He's the department administrator and oversees all ministries. Maggie is our campus minister for retreats. She facilitates our retreat program and supervises our student retreat team. I'm the campus minister for Christian service. My job is to oversee charitable outreach through student giving, organize student and staff service opportunities, organize the staff service day, monitor the student leaders of Christian service, manage our relationship with certain local nonprofits, arrange service immersion trips, and make sure all the students complete their yearly service requirement. Heidi is our department administrative assistant who manages our interns and takes on a lot of the visual creative tasks for our department. Previously, Steve was our campus minister for retreats, and I was the department assistant with a focus on supporting service. When Steve and I moved positions, job descriptions were reassessed and modified as they are now. As I've mentioned in previous posts and in my introduction, St. Francis is a great place to be. We are blessed to have a large number of faculty and staff who are fully committed to the vision and mission of the school. Basically, the mission of our school is to graduate young women who embrace Catholic values and are people of faith who are committed to personal excellence, active leadership in their community, and serving the marginalized both locally and beyond. Over the past 12 years, our service program has grown tremendously. Collectively, our students do about 30,000 hours of service per year. We have a number of upperclassmen who also serve as student liaisons with a number of local nonprofits. Our successful service trip program has capacity participation at both the student and staff level. In spite of the good work our students do, there are some recurring issues that definitely need to be addressed going into this year, the 2014-15 school year. The issues that needed to be addressed going into this school year were as follows. Some students were still frustrated with the procedures, process, and policies regarding service, what counts, and why service for some activities does not qualify for credit. Some students said they wanted to get their hours done, but didn't know what to do or where to serve. For the past 2 years, we've had about 8 to 10% of students fail to meet their service requirement on time. Failure to complete the service requirement on time not only creates more work for me, but more importantly, it creates a ripple effect of work and negative consequences for others. Previously, the registrar had to finalize a transcript with an incomplete until service was finished. Then she had to update the student's transcript with a final theology grade once it was received. But at that point, theology teachers were off contract and would never submit a grade that was academically earned. If a student completed service but failed academically, the guidance counselor was notified so that they could reschedule a student for a remedial class. And then at that point, an administrator was informed and stepped in to begin working with parents to resolve the issue. The process was cumbersome, and there were lots of gaps in the system and lots of breakdown in communications. We knew there had to be a better way. After experiencing the cycle of service last year, for me, the first time in this role, I decided we had to do something. To address the problems and concerns regarding the service requirement, I took advantage of 4 key players: my director, the vice principal of academics, the registrar, and my student leaders. First, I talked with the students separately and asked them to describe the student service experience in the best case scenario. We talked about some of the patterns of frustration I had heard about, and we talked through some scenarios about how we could address student concerns. I knew whatever we did, it had to be simple, predictable, and flexible enough to meet the diverse needs and abilities of our students. Second, when the registrar, vice principal, and I met, we discussed some of the options that would enable theology grades to not be interfered with because of a student's ability or inability to complete the requirement on time. We discussed the pros and cons of recording service on the transcript as a line item that each year was either completed or not. We also discussed, in consideration of our students' habits and patterns, whether or not we should push the deadline earlier in the year to allow more flex time for delinquent students. Administration also decided that since service is a graduation requirement, service should be regarded with the same weight as other failures. Thus, a student's consequences for failing to meet the benchmark would be more severe. After the various options were laid out, I met with my director to play out the process and implications of various options we had. In the end, we decided to add service as a class on the transcript. It is either pass or fail. Theology teachers keep control of records until spring break. After that, I take over responsibility for recording students' completion of their service requirement. Administration sends out academic probation letters to parents for students who failed to complete the requirement on time. At that point, I work with students to put them on a contract, which is essentially a plan that lets us know how a student is going to make up the delinquency. Coaches and arts program coordinators also agreed to not let their students participate until service requirements were taken care of. To address student concerns about not having information about how to complete their requirement, I began sending weekly emails outlining opportunities to earn service credit. I also had my student leaders post to the student bulletin boards printed information about ongoing service sites. Finally, I made additional visits to theology classrooms to answer students' questions about service in person. With all the changes I initiated, we went from having 80 to 100 students with delinquent service hours at the end of the year to 1 student this year. That's a 99.9% completion rate. The success of this change was only possible because we were able to look at the trends and creatively and effectively apply Foresight. Although the changes were mine to decide and implement. The process was successful because together my colleagues and I were able to construct a big picture view of our options and play through the scenarios until we found one we thought that would be best. Since this year was so successful, we'll keep the system in place and make adjustments in the years to come, should they be necessary. Moving forward, it would be nice if all students could get to the point where service becomes more than just a requirement. Sharma and Coffer contend that there are three major fault lines concerning the principal relationships that we engage in as human beings. 1. Our relationship with nature and our planet. 2. Relationships with one another. And 3. Our relationship with ourselves. When these relationships rupture, they create three divides: ecological, social, and spiritual cultural. I believe through service to others we can begin to overcome some of those divides. The ecological divide illustrates how we are at odds with creation. We have an inherent call to be stewards of creation. As a whole, we are failing in this responsibility. We need to adopt and practice policies that begin to repair the damage we've done. A healthy environment is essential to healthy people. The socioeconomic divide pits the haves against the have-nots. This deep divide is the root cause of poverty, hunger, and inequality. The spiritual cultural divide is when there is a disconnect between the interior and exterior selves. We notice this divide when we examine conditions like burnout and depression or suicide. For me, these three divides signal that our world, both the environment and its people, are crying out for renewal. That's why I take my job so seriously. I believe that each of us can make a difference, and through service, perhaps we can even close some of the divides which keep our world and its people broken. Two of the acupuncture points that need to be addressed are the income-wealth disconnect and the consumerism disconnect. I think both of these reveal the superficial level at which many of us live. With increased economic disparities, the wealth are no longer fully aware or cognizant of the struggles of the poor, especially the poor in undeveloped nations. The consumerism divide feeds the extreme that already exists. Stuff and status rule our world. For some, charity is just a band-aid that takes away the guilt of the wealthy. Systemic change is the only way we can begin to close the gap. The change will only be possible when the wealthy and powerful can empathize with the poor and the meek. My own service experiences across this country have helped, as Greenleaf would say, disturb me. I am aware of the deep hurt and despair that many people live with throughout much or all of their lives. People have shared with me their stories, their highs, and their lows. My students, who have been transformed through service, have shared with me how their lives have been impacted. And finally, the faith and lessons my grandparents handed down have helped me cope with the disruption and disturbances that I've encountered through service. An organization's strategy gives it a plan moving forward that acts as a roadmap of where they're going and how to get there. Effective strategies address the needs, contributions, and abilities of stakeholders, as well as threats and opportunities. For me, the plan to address some of the issues surrounding the service requirement was appealing because it addressed the needs of students and staff while keeping the vision of service intact. Our strategy was intentionally flexible and agile, should we need to address issues or concerns midway through if necessary. The process was an excellent experience that showed me how positive change can occur when one is truly able to employ the competency and creativity of foresight. I look forward to similar experiences for transformations and change in the future. Thank you.